coming up on the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast.
I was in a meeting in front of a client in Miami, and all of a sudden, standing in front of the client presenting, my heart rate jumped from 45 to 170 in a matter of seconds.
Andrew Brandt fought sarcoidosis himself and raised big money for the bigger fight.
I had an elevated purpose to kind of help others. But like I said, when I learned from my mistakes before, that burden that you carry is in the fight that you're doing needs to be a shared burden.
Andrew's story and how you can help coming up.
This is the Sarc Fighter podcast, living with sarcoidosis and other rare diseases. Here's your host, John Carlin.
Hello and welcome. This is episode 71 of the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast. I'm your host, John Carlin. Of course, if you listen regularly, you know I do this podcast because I want to offer fellow Sarc fighters hope and to help you connect with other Sarc patients, hear their stories, understand how sarcoidosis affects their lives, and hopefully that helps you understand what you are up against and what you need to overcome, whether it's the disease or the effects of the medicine, or in most cases, both. And of course, whenever possible, I'll shine a light on the latest research to let you know what's going on that might make your life a little bit better. And over the past year, with support from the community, FSR has been making some incredible progress in efforts to accelerate sarcoidosis research. And there's something out there that you might want to read, Spotlighting Sarcoidosis to #MakeItVisible. FSR's 2022 update is available now, and it provides an inside look at the incredible progress made in the last year, as well as upcoming initiatives and programs in the sarcoidosis world. And so you can go to the FSR website and read that update and learn how your support will actually help stop sarcoidosis, and we'll be talking a lot about that today. I do want to tell you, I mentioned in the previous podcast that I had just gone out on a bike ride with Kristen Armstrong, who is the most decorated female cyclist in United States history. She won gold medals at the Olympics in 2008 in Beijing, 2012 in London, and 2016 in Rio. And she agreed to do an interview with me. She was here in Roanoke, Virginia, where I live, Virginia's Blue Ridge. Our ride was very slow. This was not a competitive ride by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, we basically did a riding interview, which is the first time I've ever done that. And so I was working on a story about Kristen and all of her successes. And you can see it by going to the TV station's website, which is WSLS.com. There'll be a link in the show notes. But when you get there, the way our website works, you have to sign up to be a WSLS Insider, which is free, and it only takes 30 seconds, basically your name and your email address. And then you'll look for John Carlin's Outdoors if it's not right there in front of you, depending upon when you go, because the website under Insiders gets populated with new stuff. But just do a quick search for Kristen Armstrong or John Carlin's Outdoors, and you'll see it. Let me tell you, if you want a solid dose of inspiration and determination to just see what it took for her to reach the top of her sport, retire and then start a family and then come back and then do it again when she was over 40. So take a look at my story with Kristen Armstrong on WSLS.com, and maybe you'll find a solid dose of inspiration there. I certainly did in talking to her. Now today, speaking of that, we'll be listening to two people, Andrew Brandt and Angela Freelander. Angela's with FSR. Andrew is a fellow Sarc fighter. He's been diagnosed now for just over 5 years. He has pulmonary, neuro, and cutaneous sarcoidosis. But this is a guy who has a streak for running every day, and I'm going to let him describe that to you because it's incredible, and I don't want to miss anything. But he's actually ranked in the world when it comes to the most days in a row of running at least a mile. And so you take a look at this guy, a successful businessman, works for a Fortune 300 company, charismatic, nice guy. He's got a family. He goes to work. I mean, he just gets up and does all these things right, and he takes good care of himself, and he has sarcoidosis. So why him? And how did Sarc present itself to a guy who seems to be doing everything right? How did he know that something was wrong? He's going to talk about that coming up in the interview. And then Angela is going to come on because Andrew was very successful in turning his difficulty with sarcoidosis, and I guess that's putting it mildly, into a big fundraiser. And Angela, who's in charge of fundraising for FSR, is going to come on and talk a little bit about that as well at the end of the interview with Andrew. So all of that is coming up next here on the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast. Just feeding and stumbling. Hi, I hope you're enjoying the Sarc Fighter podcast. You may be wondering, what can I do to help? How can I be a part of the sarcoidosis solution? It's simple. Make a donation to KISS, Kick In to Stop Sarcoidosis. 100% of the money goes to the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. Look for a link in the show notes of the Sarc Fighter podcast. Welcome back to the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast, and joining me now is Andrew Brandt, and joining us in a little while will be Angela Freelander with FSR. But Andrew, first of all, you are a Sarc patient, and you are talking to us from just outside Chicago this morning. Tell us a little bit just about you, your family situation, and your job. Let's just meet you very quickly, and then we'll get into your journey with sarcoidosis.
Sure. I'm 43 years old, young, as I still like to, tell myself every day. But I'm happily married to a beautiful bride named Jennifer. I have 3 children. They're 20 years old, 10 years old, and 1 year old. So I'm also a part-time ringmaster of a circus, if you will. And it's, managing and parenting in 3 generations is tricky. But like you said, I live in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. So I'm an avid sports fan, but I'm also an avid runner. And ironically enough, I'm 364th in the world of active running streaks of running at least a mile every day. So today was 3,950 days without missing a single day. I've done that through pneumonia. I've done that through injuries. This week I've been doing it through COVID. And so there's many tentacles that weave into my journey with sarcoidosis, but definitely that's just a little bit about me.
So how many days have you run in a row?
3,950. And so November 23rd of this year will be 11 years straight without missing a day.
Yeah. Holy cow. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool story.
That is, and so you are, so they rank people in the world according to how many days in a row they have run, and somebody keeps track of that?
Yeah, and I'm only about 45 years shy of the number 1 place. I got some work to do.
Wow.
But the good thing is I started out as I was working in retail back in the day. So I started out as kind of a Thanksgiving to New Year's challenge, and I just haven't stopped since. And, it's like the movie Forrest Gump, where he did it for, 1,000 and some days. Well, I'm 3x Forrest Gump. So if you can imagine that without the beard, that's where I'm at today.
Well, congratulations on that. Holy cow. I'm very, very impressed. And I've had some running and cycling streaks where I try to ride or run 100 miles in a month. But every day, forget about it. But I did like 17 years of that.
Wow.
So
truly impressive. Yeah.
And
I've got over I've got almost over 20,000 miles on the ground or on a treadmill in this streak. So yeah, I'm trying to work my way around the world.
Well, congratulations on that. So, this is extremely interesting to me because I can tell that you are healthy, that you are fit. This is something that I have seen with other folks, and all of a sudden sarcoidosis shows up. So here you are doing everything quote unquote right. When did you start feeling like there's something going on here that's not right?
Yeah, it was in the summer of 2017 for me. I was in a meeting in front of a client in Miami, and all of a sudden, standing in front of the client presenting, my heart rate jumped from 45 to 170 in a matter of seconds, and I was losing track of mine. I didn't know. They asked me to sit down. I didn't know if I was having a panic attack, a stroke, whatever. And so, immediately when I got home, I went and got a full blood test, and it came back that everything was normal. And there's further indications that just the calibration of my body was off, and I could just feel it. And then there's spots on my skin that started to show up. And so in January of 2018, I went to a dermatologist who thought I had basal cell skin cancer. Skin cancer runs in my family. My mom had melanoma. So, I was really worried at that point. And the diagnosis came back, asked me to come in, said, you got something called sarcoidosis. So immediately, like I shouldn't, but most people do, I went down the Google wormhole and I got to my primary care physician. He was listening to my chest and looking me over and said, hey, these things tend to go away on their own. You're fine, but let's do an x-ray and see what's going on. And so I got the results from the radiologist who said, well, we have findings that are consistent with pulmonary fibrosis, basically stage 4. As you can imagine, I was completely devastated.
And you're still running through all of this.
So yeah, I'm still running up until this point. And that day, my parents had come over and to help me through this emotional kind of news, and I'm trying to grasp all this information. And then my wife and kids go to bed as my parents left. I remember going into my basement, finding a corner in my basement and crying like I've never cried in my life. Just not knowing how to process everything that's, the weight of, being there for your family and what's to come. And the one thing that I decided to do after I worked through that was when they get up in the morning, I want them to see what dad is doing every day. I want them to see me on the treadmill. I want them to understand that notion of one foot in front of the other is you persevering. Ironically enough, the last to join the family business, because I mentioned my run streak, but every single one of my family members outside of the 1-year-old, he just started walking 3 weeks ago. We give him time, have an active running streak. My wife just hit 2,000 days. And mind you, I said I had a 1-year-old 12 years after labor, or 12 hours after labor. She was running in her hospital room to get her mile in. So that's a whole separate podcast to talk about grit and determination. But my daughter, who's 10, is about ready to hit 1,000 days. And my 19-year-old, soon to be 20-year-old, is 8 days away from doing his first year. And, my birthday tribute last year, he made the mention of seeing me do that, seeing me do it every day and what I was going through. He has no excuses. And so I'm glad that I gave them that sense of how to face adversity. But at the same time, I was going through prednisone. And what I thought was me taking on this, I'll carry the buckets of water, I'll put the weight on my shoulders, was the wrong way to go about it with my first kind of flare up and battle with sarcoidosis, because prednisone made me completely an animal. The side effect for me was sleep. For 4 months, I didn't sleep longer than one night for 2 hours. Most nights was an hour, hour and a half. So I wasn't really pleasant to be around. And there's vivid memories of me that I will never be able to forgive myself of just snapping at my children for the littlest of things. And so what I was trying to teach them in grit and determination, I wasn't balancing myself out. And I learned a lot about how to deal with adversity as I went forward.
Well, that is definitely a runner's approach. You grit it out, you tough it out. You sometimes you don't want to get up and put those shoes on and go, but you go because that's what you do. And when you apply that to life, it generally results in successful people. But I can see where we call this the Sarc Fighter podcast, and you were fighting it the whole way, which is my approach. But we've had people on who say you need to kind of get to a live and let live situation, even give yourself permission to be that way and not feel like you have to attack things so aggressively. Again, that's not my position, and clearly it's not yours. So I want to get back a little bit to your medical condition. Your doctor said you had stage 4 pulmonary, so you've got fibrosis, and you've got a pretty good case of pulmonary sarcoidosis.
Yeah. So
what? What's your breathing like? What's going on with your body at that time?
Yeah. So thankfully and gratefully, and not everybody has this. My wife, ironically, was running a sleep clinic. Running sleep studies and working with a pulmonologist. This pulmonologist, had a history of dealing with people with sarcoidosis, and said that there has been misdiagnosis. So I got a CT scan. I was more in the stage 2, so there was some scarring. There was a lot of inflammation, but wanted to go on treatment immediately. Thankfully, I had a community. I had a network to tap into where others aren't as fortunate. Mistreatment or misdiagnosement continues to carry on. I was able to get kind of a better course for treatment, how to approach it, and also, alleviate the mind of what I was going through, the initial diagnosis from the X-rays.
How hard was it for you to breathe? People are listening to this who can't imagine running a mile, but you've got it now. You finding out that you have it in your lungs. You have your heart rate, and normally an endurance athlete's heart rate will be under 50. So you said yours jumped from 45 to mid 100s. How are you able to function through all of that? I mean, what is your walking around life like at that point?
I mean, there's times where I still struggle today, and I get vertigo and different types of situations. If I'm doing an incline, I might have different breathing, but my pulmonary function tests for breathing are high. They're remarkable, as you can imagine. That's when I kind of noticed, even when I got diagnosed again, that I had my flare-up and sarcoidosis was back. I understood that the part of the process of getting in the mindset that things weren't falling apart, they were falling together. They were falling in place. I had an elevated purpose to kind of help others. But like I said, when I learned from my mistakes before, that burden that you carry in the fight that you're doing needs to be a shared burden. And, so I humbled myself to go ask for second opinions. And I met Dr. Nadira Swice, who's here in Chicago, and works exclusively with the sarcoidosis community. I happened to come across the FSR community for the first time. And there was a collection of information, a sense of information and guidance that meant so much to me, that made my, the second time going through it, of the gratitude of the state that I was in versus some of the state that others were in, or just the fortunate thing that I was surrounding myself with a larger sense of community to prepare myself for not only just every day that what sarcoidosis brings, but what life brings. So.
Yeah, and I think that's so. So how did you stumble across FSR, if you don't mind my asking?
It was just really, so the Googling wormhole can be bad sometimes, and sometimes it can produce a gem. And that's how I really came to it. And I ended up going there for questions and information, and found it very valuable, and finding others that were on the community, supportive, and we're going through something similar and adjacent to the things that I was experiencing or having. So it normalized me. and the things that I was thinking for the first time.
Yep.
On my 10-year run streak anniversary, I made a very personal decision to share my health journey on LinkedIn. Normally I would do this on Facebook, or I would do it on my run streak community, but I wanted to encourage like that adversity, that badge of honor of, finding an arc, because when we spend time in the valley and we go through the mud, those are the times that make the ascent worthwhile. When you get to a peak and you're admiring what you're looking at, worthwhile. And so there's so much stigma in the corporate world and in any world about sharing your health journey. You don't want to put the burden on somebody else, but you also don't want people to feel like, oh, that's limiting them.
Right.
But I had so many people from that post reach out to me and thank me for sharing, and internally within my own organization saying, I feel more comfortable to be vulnerable to share what I'm going through, even if it was a health or something else that was personal, and allowing kind of their own voice and their own freedom. I go back to the John Livingston Seagull book, if you've ever read that, where people are pre-designed to do things. And it's like, well, somebody wants to be, the art of flight instead of just seagulls being predisposed to just eating is all they think about. Just so happened that Mary McGowan commented on my post, and I was able to connect with her in December. And we shared a very personal, raw conversation about our lives and things that were happening in our lives, and where her history and professional history as well had taken her to this role, and the vision that she had and the team that she was assembling. And I wanted to be a part of it. I felt like this greater sense of calling to get engaged, not only to get engaged, but like there was this convergence of things that were happening in my life where I had this gratitude going through this thing. And I had a role model, Jeff, who's my leader here at Assurant, who was just the perfect person to kind of exemplify when it comes to expressing a charitable heart and doing more within the community. So I had this inspiration, and I just needed to understand where my trauma was a breeding ground for empathy, and how can I have that empathy and apply it to the people that were in my orbit. Because sometimes you sit there, and I just took a family vacation to Colorado, and you're staring at these large mountain things, and you're staring up at the sky, and you're like, this world is so vast, yet we're all very so interconnected. And how do we contribute to kind of balancing the scales of humanity? And so I wanted to be a conduit of what I was going through and pass that through to other people to share what was important to them. So we started a charitable movement within my team. And at the time, my team here at Assurant, I oversee a team of 60 folks that support our client partners and making sure that we're positioning products and services with value and really uplifting our clients' brands. And so they brought forward very personable things that mattered to them. I had an employee that has 2 kids with cystic fibrosis. I have an employee that has a son with autism, and I have another lady on my team that has had a stroke and heart issues. So we did a walk for American Heart Association. I've got a kid on my team that grew up in a foster home. So we worked with Together We Rise to pack bags for foster kids so they don't have to leave in a trash bag. And so there's just been dozens and dozens of things that people have done. And what that's been able to do is open up their mind to expressing their charitable hearts, their charitable minds, but it also lets them see that people do care, and they'll be there to support them. And in turn, they understand I've got to lean more than I'm asking, just for people to give or for me to give. I got to give in more what I'm asking to receive back.
Right.
And so that environment has really created an amazing domino effect. And I want to say my small team of 60 of a 15,000 employee organization equates for 7% of the charitable hours. So
wow, that's a lot.
Impressive. Yeah,
that's a lot. So obviously you were able to motivate these people, but you did it by creating a sense of community within your organization, within you and those 60 folks. You were being caring and compassionate for their problems, and they in turn understood that there was a time when you needed help as well. And so you turned that into a fundraising effort, did you not?
Yeah, I mean, so we have, like I said, we do a quarterly spotlight. I mean, we do things throughout the year, but we do a quarterly spotlight where we get the organization. Insurance great at supporting their employees and allowing them to express their charitable endeavors. And they were happy enough to work with me to give a $5,000 grant. And then on top of that, I had, I think, 60 or 70 some folks join me in the Steps for Sarcoidosis to Make Sarcoidosis Visible campaign. And we were able to almost, I want to say we reached about 2 million steps as my team, which is a lot of people participating. And they also help, contribute with their wallets. I think we raised over $10,000 and to help see kind of the year over year momentum and the many great things that FSR is doing under Mary's leadership and all the great individuals that work underneath Mary. It's humbling. I literally, it was my Rudy moment. It was me feeling people lifting me up on their shoulders and showing me they care and that they were there with me every step of the way.
Rudy being the famous Notre Dame football.
Rudy Rudiger, yeah. At the end of the movie, when he finally gets in and makes a play and gets carried off the field on the shoulders, I really felt like, at the end of the month when I was reflecting, again, it's just another moment where you're just in awe of humanity and that people doing good things for people that are there to support them. So yeah, it was a very touching moment.
So does your company make it easy for people like you who see an opportunity when something like Steps for Sarc comes along? Were you able to find like matching funds or
so we have
paid time off for people? How does that work?
Yeah, so our organization gives everybody 8 hours to volunteer. They also give everybody up to $1,000 to match. If you sit on a board, they give a pretty sizable grant. And even if you don't, you can, work with our organization to get grants for things that are personal, that are in your community, that matter to you. And then we work with our clients a lot to partner on things that we are mutually looking at the world and saying, these are things that we need to address and fix. So yeah. When we have a hashtag Assurance Proud, and honestly, it's a hashtag, it's a mantra, but we live it every day. There's every day someone across our organization, whether it's individually or in a team perspective, is out there working in the community. So
right. So I understand you also were a part of the FDA patient listening session. Can you tell people why you decided to do that, what it is?
Yeah, I mean, it's honored just to be in a very select group of people to get that opportunity to get in front and create some further momentum and tell our stories of misdiagnosis, the ups and downs of the treatment options that are out there today. The technology kind of has failed us, needs to get better. The passing through and the sharing of information needs to be more accessible in the medical community. Selfishly for me, I never felt so inspired. It was the first time that I was actually in a room of people and I heard their stories, and it was just awe-inspiring. I met so many just brave individuals that have persevered and overcome. And sometimes it feels like, that they dwarf my experiences, but all of us have individual experiences. And that's what makes the beauty of the collective soul of this environment, is that you have people that are fighting and ask people to join them in the fight. And so, it's just simply the thought of wanting to do more. And I think we hit a home run. In fact, I know we did, because the people that were on that call and their stories, nobody could ignore.
What did you tell people when you shared your story?
Yeah, I just told them, the fact of, it took 7 months to really dial it in, and it was only probably dialed in that short a period of time because I did and was fortunate to have kind of my wife to connect me to somebody to kind of accelerate that process. But I also, went through prednisone 3 times, and just knowing just how awful that is for me. And I'm saying maybe it is for everybody, but it was awful for me. So if there's other treatment options, I want to make sure that we're opening up those opportunities to trial those things and to bring those to the market. But yeah, I definitely just want to make sure that I'm doing my part.
So how many milligrams of prednisone were you on at the most?
60.
60.
Yeah.
And that made you a little cranky.
I always tell people, if you remember, see, I'm dating myself, but not maybe too far back.
Not too far. You're not too old.
I'm not too old, but you remember the Kool-Aid commercials where the guy would run through the brick wall with the Kool-Aid?
That's right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I literally felt like that almost every second of the day, unless I was completely wound down at the end of the night and my eyes were falling asleep, and I would get my half an hour of sleep and then not be able to sleep after that. But yeah, I always felt like I was on edge. A lot of people.
Did you gain weight? Did you get
a lot of people gain weight and get moon face? I lost 10 pounds. I remember going back to the dermatologist for a checkup and him going, "I can't believe you're on prednisone." But that's because I was running 10 to 12 miles a day at that point. I just didn't continue on doing what I was doing. I was doing everything 2 or 3x. I was putting in 150 to 180 minutes of exercise every day. Yeah, I had more hours to do it because I was up, but I was mentally trying to, take, whatever stress and pressures that were in my mind and just put it on a pavement or put it on the treadmill. So,
well, that's amazing that you were able to do that through prednisone, because one of the things that happens is you have the boost from the prednisone, but then your body, when it's fighting sarcoidosis, you have the fatigue. And so many people come on the podcast and talk about the fatigue that they get, and that happened to me. And then I was taking some other medications, and it got to where I could barely work out, and my fitness level is not at what yours is, but it's probably more rigorous than most people's. And I just couldn't go. It wasn't prednisone. It was some other stuff. It was Cytoxin, which is a chemo drug. And they were throwing some pretty big stuff at me, but I just couldn't go. Like I couldn't even ride my bike up a hill, no matter how hard I tried. Like I couldn't breathe, and I don't even have pulmonary sarc. So
yeah, I probably can only, equate that to, I ran through pneumonia twice because I got pneumonia twice when I was on prednisone. Yeah. And that wasn't fun running through it. So I'm sure it was something similar. But to the fatigue point, man, fatigue was really an issue for me. And I don't know if that was just, a combination of the sleep. But even as I was saying, my calibration on my body was off before I went on prednisone. Man, you would wake up feeling like you hadn't slept at all. And there's days like that today where I continue to fight through. It's ironically enough, I eluded COVID for 2.5 years. I was diagnosed with COVID this last Sunday and had some kind of breathing issues this past week. But I really feel like I'm consistent and disciplined in my mental and physical preparation to face whatever life puts in front of me. I don't know when the next time, and I probably there will be a next time that I'll have a flare up, because this has happened 3 times. But I know I can do what's in my control. And if I do that every day, if I put myself in a position to have a network around me that's going to support me and pick me up when I need it, that the lows will never be so low. And I continue to remind myself of that cloak of invincibility that went away when I got this, is that I never let the highs be too high. Not to say that I don't savor the moments that are awesome, but I just never let it be so much that it doesn't keep me grounded with my feet firmly planted on the ground to make sure that I'm running this beautiful thing we call life and being prepared each and every day.
Oh, that's awesome. That's just great testimony, if you will. So you're going to continue to work with FSR and help quote unquote, hashtag make it visible and continue to get out here and with the rest of us Sarc fighters and see what you can do?
I'm gonna do my part. You can guarantee that, and I'm gonna continue to be inspired from those that are kind of leading the way, and the individuals that were part of the FDA I know are highly involved, and just if I can do a tenth of what they do, it'll make me feel like I'm contributing and helping people out. And it's not just in the sarcoidosis community. I really want to influence anybody going through autoimmune disease or facing something where, it's just tough. It's tough to put that one foot in front of the other. So, I'm going to do my part here and continue to do my part to spread the charitable heart, charitable movement.
Outstanding. Well, I want you to sit by or stand by, as we say in television news, for just a second, but I want to bring in our second guest today, Angela Freelander, who is with FSR. Thank you for joining us, Angela.
For having me, John. It's a pleasure to be here and join the conversation.
Yeah. So pretty spectacular story that Andrew's sharing with us, is it not?
Incredible. It's incredibly powerful. And all of us at FSR are so inspired by people like Andrew, who work through living with this diagnosis every single day and going above and beyond and really trying to help inspire others in the community, make a difference. It's truly how all of us get up every day, and we're so motivated to continue fighting for everyone in the community, and people like Andrew included. So
right. Well, your job with FSR is to bring money in the door to fund the research that he was talking about, and the latest number I've heard, you're probably closer to it than I am. The latest number I've heard is that there are 7 different promising quote unquote drugs in various stages of testing right now that are sarcoidosis specific, and when I started this podcast just a couple of years ago, there were none or one.
Yeah.
So things are moving along, and everything sort of flows through FSR, and one of your jobs is to work with people like Andrew who are finding workplace initiatives, and I mean that's what makes the whole thing work, isn't it?
Exactly. It's such a beautiful cycle, John, as you mentioned. It really is. It's a point of, is it the chicken or is it the egg? But it all flows together so beautifully. And, it's just great to see that how the momentum of what the community is doing, and everyone, like people like Andrew, people who are sharing their story courageously on the podcast, everyone who's been sharing their stories through the hashtag Make It Visible campaign, and what it's leading to, because it really does have an impact, John. Like you said, there's 7 promising trials in progress, and that doesn't just happen, right? We know that that's the case, and it really is because of everyone coming together. We know that collaboration, we always say this at FSR, but we really and truly believe that collaboration is key, and that it takes everyone to come together, because single-handedly we can't do this alone. So we really truly need everyone to come together to truly stop sarcoidosis, to have better treatments out there, and eventually one day a cure.
Yeah, well, let's hope that we get there. But even if we can control these situations without going to the dreaded prednisone, the devil's tic tacs, as one doctor who came on the podcast called them, no matter what we can do, it's all a step in the right direction. So, that's Angela, right. Coming up here, you and I and Andrew are speaking. This is mid-September 2022, but in October, we'll be getting a little bit of a year-end awareness feel for what FSR has planned. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, we're so excited, John, that in early October, we're going to be previewing our year-end awareness program, which will include so many different ways for the community to get involved. We want to build off of the hashtag Make It Visible initiative. That was incredibly powerful. We saw such great momentum from that kind of campaign. We saw so many people courageously share their stories, use the hashtag. It went international. We had clinicians, researchers, leadership, people around the world, patients, caregivers, supporters. And we wanted to build on that to further educate, empower, and reach more people impacted by sarcoidosis. And we know that each member, again, like Andrew and everyone else who's come on the podcast, has such a unique and powerful story to share. We wanted this year-end campaign to be another opportunity for people to teach others about sarcoidosis and use their voices to fuel change.
Well, that's awesome when it works. So Andrew and his group raised $10,000 plus, right? That must have been wonderful to get that check.
Oh my gosh, incredible. Again, it's fantastic to see all the people and to Andrew's point who want to help and who want to, be a part of the movement. We always say, John, it doesn't matter if someone raises $1 or $10,000. Every single penny that is raised for sarcoidosis and FSR is impactful and helps us accelerate sarcoidosis research initiatives and help better provide support, resources, networking opportunities for those impacted by sarcoidosis. So it's truly, truly incredible to see.
Well, one of the things that I heard Andrew talking about, that everybody heard him speak about, was sort of this gratitude for finding the sense of community, which allowed him to sort of normalize his situation, which that helps you deal with it. So when people hear me introduce the podcast, I always say, I want to be able to give you hope. I want you to be able to hear other people, understand other people, know what other people are going through, and hopefully that helps you. So FSR has something called a gratitude and giving campaign, which it was over six figures that you raised last year, right? And are you going to do that again this year?
Yeah, we're going to take the gratitude and giving campaign, and again, we're going to build on that. And I'll give your podcast listeners an exclusive for the year-end campaign, which is going to be stopping sarcoidosis one snowflake at a time. And we're going to use this initiative to continue raising funds throughout year-end, and especially on Giving Tuesday, which is November 29th, 2022, the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And it's a day dedicated to giving back and donating to drive progress. It's also a great opportunity to support groundbreaking research, patient support initiatives, and again, as Andrew said, inspiring others to make a difference in the world and tap into their charitable spirit during the holiday season.
Well, I know from serving on local boards that nonprofits receive the bulk of their funding literally in the last 2 months of the year. Mm-hmm. People are looking at whatever is their tax situation or money that's quote unquote left over in their lives, or so that's when the giving happens. And this is the time for us as Sarc patients, Sarc warriors, Sarc fighters to be thinking of FSR and keeping FSR in our thoughts as we look toward that end of the year giving, because all the things that are happening cannot keep happening without people participating in that type of giving.
Exactly. And we really need people, John, to join us in this movement to help us continue pushing forward and building on this incredible momentum. Like you said, we can't stop now. We're on this journey. We're on the roller coaster, and the roller coaster is going to keep going. We need it to keep going. Patients living with sarcoidosis, their caregivers, their supporters, everyone in the community needs this roller coaster to keep going, because there needs to be better treatments. There needs to be more access to education, to information, resources, networking opportunities, which is why we need everyone to join us. And we need to keep raising funds to make that happen.
Well, Angela, you do a fantastic job of getting the money in the door for FSR. That is so much appreciated. Speaking on behalf of my listeners and the sarcoidosis community, thank you very much for that. And Andrew, do you have any last thoughts as we begin to wrap up here? You've listened to her thoughts, and I so much appreciate you sharing your story with us. You feeling okay right now today?
Yeah, no, I feel wonderful.
Although you have COVID. Right.
The COVID symptoms seem to be gone. I slept for 20 of 24 hours. So the lack of sleep I had 4 or 5 years ago was made up this last week. No, I feel great. I feel wonderful. I've already run this morning, and a 5-mile run. So yeah, no, I feel good about the direction the FSR is going in, and playing my part, and seeing what's happening, and the treatments that are hopefully coming to bear for others is just it's just inspiring.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing your story here on the podcast, for sharing your story publicly on LinkedIn, and your experience, I think, was similar to my own when I kind of went public with it, and people started contacting me, and that was the genesis for the podcast, really. And so the more that we can amplify the voice of FSR and make FSR more effective through communication, but also through fundraising, the better off we'll all be, right?
Yeah, I had I'll finish this. I had a remarkable experience a week and a half ago with one of my employees. So I have a new employee that joined my team in the organization, and we were doing some store visits here in Chicago. And at dinner, he wanted to tell me that one of the reasons he decided to join the organization was seeing my story on LinkedIn. He had a friend that was trying to recruit him to come here, but his mother had passed away from complications with sarcoidosis. So when you see something like that, and you see somebody that understands the fight and the perseverance, and the sense of community together, it makes everything that I'm sharing and doing worthwhile, and encourage other people, not only the hearing of this about sarcoidosis, but whatever you're going through, those stripes are good stripes. It's just a part of all of our individual journeys that can have a domino effect to other people. So
you never know who you're going to touch.
Never know.
Right. Well, Angela, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, John.
Have a blessed day, everybody.
I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling.
Thanks again to Andrew and Angela. Andrew for his efforts not only to fight sarcoidosis, but then to turn that into an opportunity to raise money for FSR so that the organization can do what it needs to do in support of the rest of us who are fighting the disease. And then, of course, to Angela Freelander, she and the team at FSR never seem to slow down. Raising money is hard, and I can tell you, because I work on local and regional boards here in Virginia, that the majority of the funding available to any organization, believe it or not, comes not from grants or from the government, but from people. And pre-pandemic, the sarcoidosis community was doing so many events, and maybe that's happening again. I don't have a strong feel for it. I'm still trying to figure out what's normal right now, but it seems like we're returning to life in person, and the 5Ks and the festivals and the events are coming back, and with that comes the those that are directed at fundraising. But anything you can do to assist Angela and the team, either by doing some fundraising, making an outright donation, doing something maybe on Facebook where you dedicate your birthday to donations to FSR. Anything you can do is just so helpful. And I think this was a good time for us to shine a light on everything that Angela is doing by way of Andrew and his struggle, and then turning that around. And of course, he's still fighting the sarcoidosis, but doing so quite successfully, I would say. So there is another opportunity out there if you want to become a leader within the sarcoidosis community by sharing your story, because right now FSR is looking for, the dynamic, dedicated people who are impacted by sarcoidosis to work along the FSR Global Sarcoidosis Clinic Alliance. Volunteers can apply, and they will essentially become what's called a community outreach leader to share your sarcoidosis story with the public, to empower others and raise awareness. Or you could also apply to be a support group leader, facilitating in-person support groups. We talked about people getting back together, and it doesn't always have to be a Zoom meeting anymore. So people are needed to facilitate in-person support groups at the FSR Global Clinic Alliance member locations. So basically, once a hospital or a clinic becomes a part of the Sarcoidosis Clinic Alliance, one of the things they want to do is they want to host in-person support groups, and they're looking for people who have an interest in leading those support groups. And I've actually got some more information about that that'll be in the show notes. There's a good link. It's stopsarcoidosis.org/GSCA-leaders, but that's a lot to remember. I'll just put a link in the show notes. Got to go through some formalities here, but they're important. Remember the official Sarc Fighter song called Zombie by Mark Steyer and his band, the White Hot Lizards. And I've been in contact with Mark several times since his song became the official Sarc Fighter song, but he's back in episode 12. And he is a singer-songwriter and an athlete, and he was sidelined by sarcoidosis, but he's feeling quite well these days. So he is on the mend, although he did just recently hit me with something that is not necessarily a sarcoidosis setback, but it was another health concern that's going to affect his Sarc medication. And so he is on guard just because they're going to have to tweak his medication a little bit, and he's hoping that that doesn't cause a flare or something. No reason right now to say that it has, but just wanted to let you know that Mark is out there, and he is still a big part of the Sarc Fighter community. I release this podcast every other Monday. As I'm speaking today, my trusty dog Dougal is curled up in the chair, and he is making my life so much better. And my second dog, Pippa, is also in the office today. Don't forget to follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, on Peloton, if you happen to have a Peloton, as Sarc Fighter. I do have a cycling blog, Carl and the Cyclist, and that has a section called Cycling with Sarcoidosis. Kind of details some of the efforts that I've had to suffer through the years because of the onset of sarcoidosis, and then dealing with some pretty difficult medications over the years. If you are new here and you're just trying to figure out what Sarc is, go back and listen to episode 2 with Dr. Simon Hart of the UK. It's one of the most listened to episodes. It's Sarcoidosis 101. If you want to know all about me and my miserable backstory, go back and listen to episode 1. The story about the founding of the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research is episode 11 with Andrea and Redding Wilson. Andrea is a fellow Sarc Fighter. You can send me an email anytime you like. It's in the show notes, carlinagency@gmail.com. Follow Sarc Fighter on Instagram and Facebook, as I said, and I do appreciate your interest in the Sarc Fighter podcast. If you like it, just please tell one person. Until next time, keep fighting.
It would be so much easier to grieve if I had a breath to breathe. I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling. trying to keep up the pace. Dead man walking, counting down his days. And I don't know what will come. Look for silver linings, but still I find none. There was potential, slipping gone. It feels too fragile, but I'm holding on. I'm holding on. I'm holding on. The fear I fight every single night. Whoa, I'm still upright. Find a way to try and adapt your life. It's not the why, but the how that plagues my mind. A new perspective, appreciate what you've got. We're dead men walking, in an instant it could be gone. And I don't know what will come. Look for silver linings, but still I find none. There was potential, slipping gone. It feels too fragile, but I'm holding on. I'm holding on. I'm holding on. The fear I fight every single night. Whoa, I'm still upright. Wherever there is happiness, fight to be there too. And remember there are friendly smiles, try hard to smile too. And wherever there is sunshine, don't let fear darken you. And whatever happens, please remember right now, be lost to